Hey everyone, it's Zach Wright from IMEO Company, improving management, employees, and organizations. We really focus on people, process, and purpose, and we deliver that through our leadership coaching, our personal development and growth, and then our organizational development and psychology services. Today, as part of organizational psychology, I wanted to talk to you about building cohesive teams. One of the things that I've seen with working with a lot of organizations is that there's a lot of miscommunication that occurs. There's fear of having conflict. There's an idea that a perfect team always agrees. Well, today I wanted to talk you through what a cohesive team is, why it's important, and how to implement this into your culture. So, what is a cohesive team? Team cohesion is when a group of individuals feel connected and are driven to accomplish a common goal. So we often hear companies talking about the mission, the vision, their core values. That's what we're talking about here. And it could be even at a lower level. So you start with the mission and then you focus on that as your North Star, but you reverse engineer it where now as a team, a specific department, you can rearrange that where this mission is specific to your company or to your department, or it could even be specified down a step lower to an individual contributor. What we do is use objectives and key results, which is a goal-setting framework created by John Doerr and Andy Grove. Now, this is something that Google uses, Apple uses, Amazon. We can get into that on a different subject or a different topic or video. So whenever we're looking at cohesive teams, we're looking at diverse backgrounds. So it's not everybody thinks alike. It's not that everybody comes from the same background. And I don't just mean race or the same person as a male or a female. I mean diversion in the sense of where you grew up, what your beliefs are, what is your education background, basically any way to bring in a different voice into that team. And the importance of that is being able to have different perspectives, being able to have different conversations that make you think outside of the box or that makes you think differently than you would on your own. One of the things that I try to do, especially because I'm working with men, women, different teams, different leaders, everybody is different. I try to take in content that helps me understand a woman's point of view, an African American's point of view, an Asian's point of view, somebody who isn't a white male. I want to be able to at least come to the table with some knowledge that I can say, okay, this is different. They're different from me. How can I relate to them in the sense of building cohesion? But how can I also relate in the sense of saying, this is my perspective. How do you think about this? How is your background different? And how can we mesh these together to build a cohesive team? And really what we're looking at here is having that diversity, having that diverse background of people, and then really meshing it together as shared values, goals, and purpose. It goes back to creating that team cohesive cohesion between accomplishing that common goal. And then the very first step to building a cohesive team has to be trust. If you don't start with trust, then a lot of things that will be brought up in these situations can be seen as attacking their character, attacking them. Because what happens in a cohesive team is that it's not happy-go-lucky. It's not that everybody is moving and dancing to the same beat. No, there's a lot of arguments. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of tough conversations happening. And what the reason that trust is so important to start with is once you establish that trust, you begin to act like a family. And what I mean by acting like a family is not that you're related or anything like that. What I mean is that if you think about a good family structure, I'm not talking about dysfunctional families, right? I'm talking about families who communicate truthfully and transparently. If you think about this, if you have a sibling or you have a good relationship with your parents or your parents have a good relationship with their grandparents or so on and so forth, whatever type of structure you want to put here, if you think about this, a family member will tell you the truth, even if it's hurtful. And it's not that they're trying to hurt you, it's that they are trying to improve you. That's their goal. And the reason that you don't get upset about what they're saying for the longevity, you might be as upset in the moment, but as you reflect, you'll say, you know what, that is actually true. And now you're aware of what it was that was said. Now you can build off of that. You can start to become better. That's the importance of trust. But if you think about it from a family perspective, when they tell you the truth, you take it, you adapt it, you reflect, and then you hopefully grow from it. That's what you're trying to do and what you're trying to establish when building a cohesive team. You want to be able to have those tough conversations, because if you don't have those tough conversations, then a lot of things fall to the wayside, or you avoid creating a psychologically safe environment, which is establishing a culture that people can bring up ideas, they can bring up concerns, they can have questions without, or they can make mistakes without having that consequence behind them. If you establish trust, then you can establish a psychologically safe environment, which helps your team bring up ideas, talk about mistakes. And actually, from the studies that I've read and I've seen, teams who are the best actually have more mistakes. And the reason that that's important to call out here is because if you are trying to be a perfect team, you're already messing up. Admitting mistakes gives you the opportunity to course correct in almost real time. Where if you build a culture of fear, so let's say that you're a micromanager, or if somebody comes up to you with a mistake and you say, why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me? Why? And the employees are shutting down. They don't want to come to you because they know that if they come to you with a mistake, then you're automatically going to have you're going to have them be met with consequences. We want to avoid that. That does not create team cohesiveness or team cohesion. That creates a dysfunctional team. So all that to say it, start with trust. And then the second part of the equation is establish the characteristics that you're trying to bring into your organization. So clearly define goals and values. Again, it goes from the mission, the vision, the core values. And it's not that corporate talk where you're talking about, we want to da-da-da-da. And then you print it out on a piece of paper at everybody's desk, or you have it in the hallway where everybody can see it. If you are not living your values, then you're teaching a distinction into your culture. You're saying, I don't have to listen to what the mission is. And that's subconscious, right? Your employees are seeing that from you. It's much like a child looks at their parent and copies them, right? A leader is that parent to the employee, not necessarily, right? Like not a hierarchy. They're not better than you, or they don't know more than you, or anything like that. But it's that structure. They have this ability to coerce the employees. So as a leader, you want to lead by example and actually behave the way that the values you're trying to embed in your culture, the way that they are, right? So what you do matters because people see that and they'll start to live out that behavior as well. The second part of the characteristics is appropriate training and development opportunities. If you want a cohesive team, you have to train them appropriately. And the word appropriate here really means what it says. If you have a team member and they don't have the appropriate training and you're asking them to do something on that, then it's going to cause disruption. It's going to cause a conflict, and not a good conflict, as I was mentioning before. It's going to cause a bad conflict because what you're asking them to do is not meeting what they know. So you as a leader, as a company, need to match what you're asking the employee to do with training and development. And then you want to have highly engaged communication and candidness. Now, this goes to the good conflict. If you have good conflict after establishing the trust, it goes back to the family example. This is where you're able to be candid. So if I bring up something and it's not the right way to go about it, you can say, Zach, I don't think that what you're doing here, and mention a specific thing so they know that it's not them, but it's the action that they're doing. So that specific thing, instead of letting the employee think that it's everything about what they do, how they behave, how they act, you want to say, Zach, in this particular situation where you were talking about this to the prospect, I would have approached it this way, or give them some examples, or let the team come in and help establish that as well. So that's what I mean by candidness. But the communication part is if there's any changes that happen, if there's something that's going on in the background, if you can tell your employee and your team something about it, right? I think companies don't do a great job of delivering the transparency that they speak of, right? So if we're going through an organizational structure change, so that means that people are being let go, or we're changing titles, somebody's moving over here, somebody's doing this, or we're changing corporate positioning or company messaging, bring in your employees and let them know what's happening. Because again, if you don't have that trust, if you don't communicate, then it's going to go to the water cooler gossip talk, right? And this still happens in remote environments too. They're picking up the phone and they're calling their colleagues talking about, hey, did you hear that we're doing this? And if you're not transparent with them and upfront with them, then it becomes a telephone game. I heard it from Joe, who heard it from Jan, who heard it from whoever, right? And by the time that it swindles down across the company, it's not even close to what is true. So take the initiative to speak to your team and let them know what is going on. Even if you can't tell them everything, just keep them updated. Especially if we talk about layoffs, let the company know why this is happening. Is it because we're not financially stable? Is it because we just didn't need that? We did an internal audit and we realized that this group over here wasn't actually adding value to what we need in this specific time. Because what they're going to hear is that you care about them enough to let them know that this is what's happening. You also give them the breath of relief a little bit, right? Anytime that we hear layoffs, the workforce is going to be a little bit worried. But it's that communication. And it's not just like with the big things, it's with the small things too. So in your team meetings, talk about what's going on. Like if you're talking about building a cohesive team, don't just start throwing it out there. Say, team, what I want to do is have a more cohesive team. I want to be able to work with you in a better way where I can become a trusted advisor for you. I want to be your coach. I want to be your partner. I don't want to necessarily just be your manager. I want to be your partner in your ability to grow and achieve in this specific role. Like, tell me your goals, tell me your dreams. Let's work to get you from A to B, right? And just having those conversations will help you work better with your people. The more that you know about them, the better you can manage them. Just true. Trust across the entire team. I think I beat a dead horse there. I think we dove into that pretty successfully here. But if you have any questions, drop something in the comments or reach out to us directly. So the next part of characteristics is celebration for success. Look, work doesn't always have to be tough. It doesn't always have to be hard. Celebrate the small wins. You know, if you're ramping up somebody and they're just starting, make sure that you have a process that allows them to win on that first week, that second week, that third week. Like, really build that in. But then as they continue to be there, reward them, recognize them. Now, this goes back to understanding your employee. You want to understand how to appropriately recognize them. Not everybody likes to be put on the spotlight and be rewarded in front of everybody. Somebody just wants to have a $5 gift card sent to them so they can get some Dunkin' or Starbucks. But again, be specific with how you're recognizing them, right? So, Zach, you did a really great job on the presentation yesterday. I really like slides 1 and 3 because you mentioned X, Y, and Z. Now, that goes back to establishing the behaviors that you want to have in your company, right? Because you're being very specific. That's telling the employee that my manager or my partner, my coach, told me that they really enjoyed this. So now I know that I need to focus on that. That's the behavior that I'm bringing to the table now, right? It's these small little things that build up to big results to create a cohesive team. The last one is kind of something that we've already touched upon too, which is real discussions around mistakes and ways to improve. So with this, what we're trying to do is have these real discussions. That's not just some BS, right? I think about the organization that I've been in where it's sales and you have these metric-based environments. So you have to make this amount of calls. You have to get this amount of candidates. You have to get this amount of offers in a week, in a month, in a quarter. But what happens is whenever you focus on the wrong things, then you start to just, you kind of fib on what is happening, right? I got to the point in an organization where we had to make 40 calls. And if we didn't make that number, then we were talked to not in a great way, right? It goes back to that consequence. And it really created a fear in the culture that if you didn't get this number, that you were a failure or you weren't good enough. So what would happen is we would smile and dial, so to speak, where we're picking up the phone, we're calling. And we got to the point where we didn't want the person to answer because we wanted to get 40 calls so we didn't get in trouble, right? That's establishing the wrong culture. That's establishing the wrong behaviors. So when I say real discussions, it's create that trust first, create that psychologically safe environment for people to speak up without consequences, and then work together on an action plan to see how you can improve this, right? In that situation that I mentioned with the calls, if they didn't have the calls, but they're still meeting their offers, they're meeting their candidate quota. What is the real issue, right? Talk to them about why the calls are important. Like, Zach, I understand that as you go through this call sequence, you're talking to more people, which is great. But what we really try to do is have a weekly average of 40 calls a day so we can still build off of that. It's a compound effect where the more people that you try to contact, the more likely you're going to have consistent success. So you might be successful this month, but have you noticed an inconsistency of finding candidates? And whenever you establish that why behind it, both of you will walk away with a greater understanding of why that person isn't making that number or why they need to make that number, right? And that might not be the best example. There's other examples that we can run through. For example, I believe it was Ford or it was General Motors company where there was a CEO who had their leadership come into the office and give them status updates. This was a team meeting. And what we noticed was, or not we, I wasn't there, but what was noticed was that the team consistently always had green on their status reports, but they weren't meeting their deadlines. They weren't meeting their budget. They weren't meeting this and that. So a new CEO came in there and he realized this pretty quickly. And he said, hey, we can't always have green all the time. What's going on here? Because if all these are green, we shouldn't be having any issues. And what happened was the CEO from before had created fear in the culture and nobody wanted to speak up. Because what happened for that, the previous CEO, when people spoke up on his account, they would get punished. They would get berated with yelling and probably degrading comments on them making or not making the status. So everybody changed their status to green. That's just how the culture started to work. The new CEO came in there and he had to lead by example. And within 2, maybe 3 weeks, somebody had the courage enough to speak up and say, this project is red. Everybody looked around the room frightened. What is this new CEO going to do? He congratulated him. He celebrated him not having a green box on the status because he knew that this was the move in the right direction to establish a culture that can adapt, can iterate, can learn from their mistakes and grow faster than before. And what they saw was exactly that. Now they could admit their mistakes. People could speak up. The next week they had more red. The next week they had more red, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually good because if you don't know if a problem is there, you can't fix it. So now they were able to fix what they needed to. Okay. Then this last part is really just how IMEO can help you. I mean, if you can't tell, I've been doing 20 minutes of talking on this. This is what I'm passionate about. And at IMEO, improving management, employees, and organizations, that's our whole purpose. We are trying to help your company, help other companies become better, help their employees enjoy what they do, and help them really create a hockey stick curve, but in the right way, where you don't sacrifice happiness, where you don't sacrifice other people's happiness, right? So we've worked with small businesses from the car dealership, from marketing agencies, to renovation companies, to other coaches, to all the way publicly traded companies, right? We've worked with some companies who work with fairly big names. They've worked with Kaiser Permanente, Pfizer, Toyota. We've implemented coaching programs into their establishments, and we've seen great results from it. So if you are interested in learning more about how you can build a cohesive team, or how you can implement a coaching program into your organization, reach out to us at imeocompany.com, or you can send me a direct email, zwright, zwright, at imeoconsulting.com. Or you can find us on Instagram at Zach A. Wright, Zach A. W-R-I-G-H-T, or LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook at imeocompany.com or at imeocompany. But thanks so much for watching this. I hope that you were able to take some good tips and tricks that you can implement into your organization. But we'll see you on the next video.